The Cherokee Trail of Tears. The Cherokees had fought other tribes to hold their land, but American settlers were harder to defeat. In the 1830s, the Cherokees were forced to leave the land they loved and make the harsh journey along the Trail of Tears to their new home. What events led to this move? In the spring of 1838, 7,000 American soldiers arrived. They had come to round up the Cherokees in New Dakota, Georgia, and other parts of the Southeast, and to force them from their homes. Some soldiers mistreated the Cherokees, but others felt badly for them. The general in charge thought that he saw tears in the eyes of some troops. The Cherokees had been warned for 2 years that this day was coming, yet many tribal members were still unprepared. They begged for more time to collect their things, but the soldiers refused. The scene was heartbreaking as families picked through their belongings and made agonizing choices. For each item, they had to decide whether or not they could carry it with them. For many, the move meant leaving behind the family pet or cherished personal treasures. A crowd of American settlers waited for the Cherokee to depart. It was clear that they would take whatever the tribe left behind. In desperation, a few Cherokee tried to sell items they could not carry, but there was little time to bargain. The soldiers forced the Cherokee to begin a long and brutal march to a strange new place hundreds of miles away. Americans want land. The events of 1838 had been building for years. The Cherokees were among the last tribes to leave their homes in the Southeast. Others, such as Choctaws, Creeks, Chickasaws, and Seminoles, had already moved on or had been forced out. The mighty Cherokees had held their homeland, which had once stretched across the Southeast for a long time. They had defeated many tribes, including the Creeks, the Shawnees, and even the powerful Iroquois, who wanted their land, but the Cherokee had survived and thrived. Then in the late 1700s and early 1800s, white American settlers had begun a steady advance to the west. They had moved beyond their land along the Atlantic coast and were after more. The settlers saw the forests used by the Cherokees and other tribes for hunting as land that could be cleared and used by American farmers. Only the American Indians stood in the way of progress. The U.S. government began working to push the American Indians off their land, to force them west beyond the Mississippi River. There the Americans said the tribes would not be in the way of the U.S. settlement. The United States had used several methods to get the American Indians to leave. The government bought their land and gave them new western homes. It harassed them, took their land illegally, and even waged war against them. In all these ways, American Indians steadily lost their lands east of the Mississippi. The Cherokees were among the last to remain in their eastern home. You can see at the top of the page it says, in this painting, Trail of Tears by Robert Lindeau, thousands of Cherokees begin the long march away from their homeland. Many of them would die before they reached the final destination of Oklahoma. Cherokees try to live among Americans. The Cherokees had wanted to keep their lands but had chosen not to fight the new settlers. They knew that the Creeks and the Seminoles had suffered serious losses when they had battled the Americans. Instead, the Cherokees tried to fit in with the settlers. Some Cherokees lived on American-style farms and sent their children to American-style schools. A Cherokee named Sequoyah created a written form of the Cherokee language. Soon thousands of Cherokees had learned to read and write. Still, white settlers did not accept the Cherokees. Settlers fought the Cherokee people and took their land. In 1829, gold was found on Cherokee land in Georgia, and hundreds of gold seekers rushed to the area. Now there was a greater demand for the U.S. government to remove the Cherokees. U.S. President Andrew Jackson agreed that the Cherokees must go and hoped that they would leave there on their own. He offered to trade their land in the east for land in the west, but they refused. Jackson got angry. He did not stop Georgia's government from sending soldiers to attack the Cherokees. Even though the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that Georgia's actions were illegal in 1831, President Jackson did not enforce this ruling. A small group of Cherokees feared that they would lose their land, so they signed a treaty with the U.S. government saying that all the Cherokees would leave their homes by 1838. The tribe would move to new homes in present-day Oklahoma. Many Cherokee tribe members were furious about the group's actions. They believed that the group did not have a right to speak for the whole tribe. They didn't think the treaty should stand, but the U.S. government disagreed. A few thousand Cherokees gave up and left, while 16,000 refused to go. And so in May of 1838, the American troops arrived to force the Cherokees out. The terrible journey. The journey west was grueling and would last for months. A few Cherokees traveled by water, but most of them made the hundreds of mile journey on foot. The children and the elderly moved slowly. Along the way, the Cherokees suffered terribly. They traveled through the heat, cold, snow, and rain with little food and water. To make matters worse, disease spread quickly through their crowded camps. The young and the old died first, but soon even strong men and women began to fall. Graves littered the roadside as about 4,000 of the 16,000 Cherokees who began the trip did not survive. One survivor wrote, "Children cry and many men cry, and all look sad when the friends die. But they say nothing and just put heads down and keep on going towards the west." The Cherokees' path to Oklahoma became known as the Trail of Tears. As the journey's end, At the journey's end, the Cherokees faced another ordeal. The tribe was still divided over the treaty that had led to their removal. Many leaders that had signed the treaty were killed. Despite these hardships, the Cherokees survived. They settled into new homes and formed a new tribal government in Oklahoma. Just as importantly, they kept alive the proud traditions. Meanwhile, the United States would continue to expand and grow. Settlers quickly filled the land with the Cherokees and the other tribes of the East, such as the Creeks, Choctaws, Chickasaws, and Seminoles, had left behind. Still, as the restless, determined people of the young country continued to press west, Americans would find that the Cherokee Indians were not the last American Indian tribe they would come into conflict with. At the top of the page, you can see a picture, and it says, "Despite their hardships, the Cherokees were able to survive in Oklahoma." This image shows a Cherokee school in Oklahoma from the 1880s.